If you have the chance to step through the gates of an ancient city, what is the first thing that will hit your mind? Try to close your eyes. Do not think about magnificent music. Just the rough sounds of real life. The sound of horse hooves pounding on the stone floor. The sound of people shouting and bargaining. The harsh sound of a hammer striking metal. The sound of dogs barking and wheels rattling. Now, shift your perspective to your sense of smell. In the first alley, you smell freshly baked bread. Walking a few more meters, pungent wood smoke rushes into your nose. Turning around a street corner, the strong, fishy smell of raw fish. Passing by a workshop, the overpowering smell of fermented urine rises up. Gliding past a public latrine, the smell of human waste. And right next to it is a stable with the distinct smell of manure. We often imagine the ancient city through our eyes. Magnificent temples, marble columns, beautiful statues. But if you actually step foot into that world, perhaps the thing that makes you realize you are in a completely different universe is exactly your nose. Why did ancient cities smell so terribly bad? And did ancient people actually think that their cities smelled terrible, or not? First, we must shatter an incredibly common stereotype. An ancient city might not have stank continuously, as you imagine. A study in the year 2022 mapped the smellscape of a residential neighborhood in the ancient city of Pompeii. The conclusion pointed out that this area absolutely did not exist under a continuous thick cloud of stench. Smells were localized. They changed according to activities, were affected by air currents, cleaning, architecture, and the social hierarchy system. The bakery smelled of bread. The fullery smelled of urine. The public latrine smelled of waste. The street fountain smelled of fresh water, and the market was filled with the smell of raw food. The author of the study even suggested that the popular picture of a Roman town as a place that always smelled miserably foul might have been massively exaggerated. Ancient cities probably did not have just one smell. They had thousands of smells, packed together in an unusually close way. The real core problem did not lie in dirtiness. It lay in density. Imagine a campsite of about 50 people. If one person goes to the toilet, the waste can be located very far away from the living area. Kitchen smoke easily disperses into the air, and animals are not clumped together into the same narrow alley. But in a city with more than 10,000 people, every day humans excrete waste, animals excrete waste, thousands of cooking fires create smoke, tons of spoiled food, and workshops continuously discharge byproducts. You do not need ancient people to be dirty. You just need a crowded density. One person plus waste equals manageable. But 10,000 people plus daily waste equals a massive urban crisis. The city solved the problems of trade, defense, and specialization, but at the same time, it gave birth to a completely new problem. Where does everything that a city does not want to keep go? The first and most obvious source of bad smell: human waste. Human waste creates foul odors, pollutes the land, and spawns countless cesspits. Archaeological evidence in Mesopotamia shows that lavatories and foul water drains already existed inside residential houses. One of the earliest toilet-making traditions in the city of Uruk around the end of the 4th millennium before Christ was the use of deep pits. However, it seems that only a small number of households owned private toilets. The disposal of domestic waste largely remained a spontaneous, local matter. And this is an incredibly important distinction. Having a toilet does not mean that the waste will disappear from the residential area. It might simply drop straight down into a giant pit right beneath the floor of your house. One of the oldest sanitation technologies was not to make waste disappear. It was to hide the waste in a place where you did not have to look at it every day. And this is the hardest plot twist to smell. Urine was not just waste. It was an invaluable raw material. Look at the fulling industry of ancient Rome. Woolen cloth needed to be cleaned, degreased, and processed through many stages. When decomposing, urine produces ammonia gas and could be used in these washing processes. Evidence at the city of Ostia even shows that liquid from a public urinal area was piped straight to underground fulleries. Studies on the Roman fulling industry emphasize that urine was exactly a powerful industrial cleaning agent, and simultaneously explain the pungent foul smells surrounding these professions. Something that made the city smell overwhelmingly bad could carry a massive economic value. That was the circular economy in the most ancient and foul-smelling way. Of course, do not fall into the myth that every Roman fullery depended entirely on urine. The actual process was much more complicated. But the image of a fuller smiling happily when receiving a full bucket of urine was certainly a characteristic feature of the ancient world. Besides humans, animals were also legal residents of the ancient city. A city was not just filled with people. It had horses, donkeys, mules, cattle, pigs, dogs, and thousands of poultry. Animals provided transportation, food, traction power, and trade goods. But animals also continuously produced manure, urine, carcasses, and food waste. Archaeological DNA evidence from ancient latrines even discovered evidence of parasites related to sheep, horses, dogs, pigs, and rodents, proving that human and animal settlements lived extremely close together. Speaking figuratively, the streets in the ancient city were half a traffic road and half, truly, a giant stable with no partitions. And do not forget, food absolutely did not arrive in the ancient city in clean plastic packaging layers. In modern supermarkets, red pieces of meat have been neatly sliced, fish is chilled, and those clustered bones completely disappear. But in an ancient market, the animal was brought in the most intact shape possible. On-site butchery activities created blood, bones, offal, and fish waste. Recent research on Roman markets records the existence of countless fish scales, animal bones, and butchery traces scattered in drainage ditches and trading areas. The scene of an intact animal entering the market. Blood, skin, guts, and bones were discarded right on the spot. And without modern garbage trucks coming to collect them every evening, where would that pile of remains go? But there is a type of smell that we modern city dwellers very easily forget. That is smoke. Ancient cities depended on thousands of combustion sources operating continuously every day. Cooking fires, heating hearths, pottery kilns, metallurgy furnaces, oil lamps, and countless bakeries. Ancient Rome already had harsh complaints and observations about the smoky atmosphere. Historical research on air pollution records wood fires, blackened buildings, and disputes in Rome related to air pollution. Long before we faced fossil fuel pollution, ancient cities had a much simpler but more eye-stinging pollution problem: smoke. Almost every survival activity required fire. You might wonder, if the foul smell was so bad, why did they not build an underground sewer system? And you are completely right. The Romans had underground sewers. The Babylonians had drainage ditches. Cities belonging to the Indus River Valley civilization possessed incredibly impressive drainage infrastructure. The city of Mohenjo-Daro had squarely planned streets and an extensive drainage system. South Asian archaeology has long recorded bathrooms, household drainage pipes, and extremely complex wastewater treatment infrastructure. So, did the underground sewer system solve every problem? The harsh truth is, not exactly like that. The underground sewer system absolutely did not destroy waste. It only moved waste. A sewer system operates on the principle of moving waste from this place to another place. If the waste flowed out to a river, a ditch, a low-lying land area, or the edge of the settlement, the stench and pollution were simply moved from the wealthy neighborhood to a poorer, more isolated area. Of course, not all ancient underground sewer systems were used to flush feces. Drainage systems could channel rainwater, domestic wastewater, or toilet waste, depending on the location and period. However, the sewer absolutely did not make waste disappear from the world. It only changed who would be the one having to endure those foul smells. And here is the strongest biological shock for you. The Romans built extremely impressive sanitation systems, but parasites still surrounded everywhere. The Roman world had aqueducts, fountains, public baths, multi-seat latrines, underground sewers, and incredibly strict sanitation laws. Yet archaeological evidence of parasites still shows the widespread transmission of whipworms, roundworms, and organisms causing dysentery. Dr. Piers Mitchell concluded that Roman sanitation measures were not enough to prevent fecal contamination and the transmission of parasites on a population scale. Recent research also discovered that parasites transmitted through the fecal-oral route increased noticeably in Roman period archaeological contexts. At the same time, Roman urban areas in Britain had a significantly higher diversity of parasites compared to rural areas. This is a vital distinction. Bad smell does not equate to disease. A street can be very stinky, but that smell is not what spawns parasites. Conversely, a place can have a very pleasant smell, but the water source is still filled with deadly bacteria. Ancient sanitation systems could make a city look cleaner, but they were completely powerless in making the microscopic world of that city become safe. However, never talk about ancient people as if they were so used to living in stench that their noses were completely deaf. Completely the opposite. Ancient urban societies constantly complained about unpleasant, foul smells. They associated scents with specific occupations. They managed odor-causing activities through spatial planning, and deeply cherished perfumes, gardens, fresh air, and bathing. Ancient Greek and Roman authorities even had traditions of relocating sources emitting foul smells or conducting litigation over nuisances caused by pollution. Research on the smellscape in the city of Pompeii indicates that odor management was closely tied to the social hierarchy system and power relations. The nose of ancient people was not different at all, only their expectations and technologies were different. And not everyone breathed the same kind of scent in the city. The sense of smell was also a part of urban inequality. Wealthy households possessed spacious areas, breezy courtyards, gardens, fountains, and private sanitation facilities. Meanwhile, poorer residents or the working class had to live crowded right next to stinky craft workshops, bustling streets, industrial waste, and noisy animal traffic. Research on foul smells in Pompeii argues that odor control was not the same for every resident. Power relations shaped who could create a distance from unpleasant foul smells. Money could buy an invisible privilege, a safe distance from the waste of other people. However, we are also not allowed to turn ancient streets into a giant garbage dump. Popular historical movies often depict ancient streets as a muddy swamp, with garbage and feces scattered everywhere 24 hours a day. Archaeology offers a more complex picture than that. Research at the city of Aquileia shows that waste removal might have worked well enough, to the point that a portion of the archaeological record during inhabited phases became poor in artifacts, simply because the discarded materials were periodically cleaned up and taken out of the urban area. Sometimes, archaeologists find very little garbage, not because those residents did not litter, but because someone had already cleaned them up. The failure to find waste in itself can be a solid piece of evidence for waste collection. So, where did the waste go? There are countless possibilities. Dug pits, cesspits, drainage ditches outside the city, reused as materials, as fertilizer, or dumped in low-lying lands. There is no single system that fits all. This is exactly the circular economy in an ancient way. Something that is waste to this person can absolutely be a type of resource to another person. Urine turned into detergent, organic waste into fertilizer, broken pottery into building materials. Ash was reused or taken away to be dumped. The ancient city smelled, partly because the boundary between waste and resource was much thinner and more chaotic compared to our era. And in the same city, scents could completely transform according to the weather. On a severely hot and sunny day, the decomposition process happens faster. The foul smell becomes overpowering and aggressive. On a windless day, smoke settles thickly on rooftops. When a downpour falls, streets and drains are washed clean, but sometimes dirty water rises and floods everywhere. When the wind picks up, some foul smells disappear, but new foul smells from craft workshops are blown all the way to distant residential areas. That is the reason why we should never say the phrase, "Rome smelled like this." A city absolutely did not have a fixed scent. It was alive and constantly changing across space and time. Try to look back one more time. If you completely removed all foul smells from the ancient city, what would you be removing? The smell of bread disappears. Bakeries stop operating. The smell of animals disappears. There is no more transportation and food. The smell of smoke is gone. Kilns, kitchens, and blacksmith workshops are extinguished. The fishy smell of fish is gone. Markets are dismantled. The smell of urine disappears. The textile industry collapses. The smell of the sweating crowd disappears. The labor force and trade networks completely evaporate. A completely odorless ancient city is very likely a dead city. Smell is not just evidence of poor sanitation. It is the heartbeat, the pulsation, the testament to the metabolism of a giant urban machine. Ultimately, why did ancient cities smell so terribly bad? Next time, if you imagine yourself stepping onto an ancient street, do not just see a stinky mess. Horse manure is transportation. Smoke is cooking. Urine is the textile industry. Dead fish is the market. And the smell of foul public latrines is exactly the consequence of thousands of living bodies having to share a tight space. Ancient cities smelled because they concentrated humans, animals, food production activities, fuel burning, industry, and countless types of waste at dense levels that prehistoric villages never had to face. Residents of those cities built drainage systems, toilets, underground sewers, and waste cleanup systems. But those technologies usually only managed the location of the waste, without possessing any magic to make them completely evaporate. And more importantly, ancient cities were absolutely not miserably stinky in a uniform way. A poor residential area could be suffocating and smell completely different from a breezy courtyard of the elite class. A freezing cold winter morning would also carry a completely different atmosphere compared to a fiery afternoon of summer. Ancient cities did not smell terribly bad because ancient people were dirty or did not care about cleanliness. Cities smelled simply because humanity learned how to cram thousands of lives into the same place, long before we learned how to make their waste vanish into the air.